Human beings have a tendency to live their lives according to a whole manner of principles. Principles which affect our moral and political decisions, principles which shape the way that we treat each other, and principles which shape the way that we think about and interpret the world. If there's one principle which I personally value as particularly significant to the progression of society and mind, it's this. It's the basic principle which states, at its most fundamental level, that every idea, every belief, and every belief system can and should be open to criticism, ridicule, and skeptical analysis, bar none. Now, this suggestion is usually rather inoffensive to most people. People not only condone, but often welcome a healthy challenging of their views or the things that they say. I mean, it's the very nature of conversation. Imagine trying to strike up an interesting philosophical dialogue with someone who simply agrees with everything you have to say. Thorough analysis of conflicting opinions is how the conversation progresses. It's how society progresses. And yet, there is one specific area, for no apparent reason, this one particular topic of discussion, which is exempt. And you already know exactly what I'm referring to. Criticism and ridicule are the most important mechanisms to allow for the progression of understanding. Now, some may argue that there exist certain ideas and beliefs which are so integral to a society or to a culture that they shouldn't be challenged. Well, let me ask you, what if the Aristotelian view of forces had never been challenged? If it had been seen as too integral to the philosophy of the ancient Greeks? Or then perhaps Isaac Newton would never have discovered their true nature. And furthermore, what if Isaac Newton's own ideas about gravity had been viewed as untouchable? Well, then perhaps Albert Einstein, centuries later, would never have discovered its true nature and its relation to space-time. This is progress. This is the very nature of science, and this is why it frustrates me so much to hear people say, well, your science is just based upon faith. You have ideas which you don't challenge and that you just take for granted without evidence, acting as though science has its own sacrosanctity and that we'd be offended if its foundations were challenged. Well, I'll tell you something. Not only is taking an idea, a belief, a pre-existing notion, and challenging it, testing it to see if it's wrong, trying to criticize it, not only is that permitted in science, that is science. Take the obvious example of evolution. Go and ask an evolutionary biologist how they would respond to their current beliefs regarding evolution being proved wrong. Imagine you could categorically prove evolution to be incorrect. Well, you might expect that they would be angry, that they'd be distraught that their beliefs and that which they built their livelihoods upon is false. But let me tell you, if you could prove that evolution did not occur, if you could prove that gravity did not exist as we understand it, if you could prove categorically that the Big Bang didn't happen or that the universe isn't expanding or something, not only would you not be scoffed at and detested, no, you'd be embraced as a hero by the scientific community. You'd win the Nobel Prize and change the face of science and our understanding of the universe forever. Okay, and that's the nature of science. If you can prove something wrong, you're not stoned or hanged for it. You're not thrown off a building. You're not violently suppressed or excommunicated. No, you're embraced as a hero of human understanding. And this is why science and technology have been able to progress so triumphantly. Okay, let's make a comparison. Look at science 2,000 years ago, and look at it now. Look at the progression, look at the evolution, look at the prosperity that exists as a direct result of its inquiry. And now I invite you to do precisely the same thing with religion. Look at religion 2,000 years ago, and look at it now. And I need no further elaboration. I don't need to explain why this juxtaposition makes a strong case. You already and immediately understand. But why is this? Why is religion so stagnant while science is able to make such incredible strides? Well, at least as prosperously as it can do while still shackled to the adversity of faith. Well, there's a very important distinction between a faith-based worldview and a science-based worldview. The most fundamental difference, the most telling and perhaps the most important difference, is the scientific community's willingness and ability to change its mind. Without this crucial humility, without a desire to have not only the trivialities of your worldview, but its fundamental core principles, until we're excited about the prospect of them being proven wrong, and willing to reject the sanctity of tradition, we will forever be condemned to a world of scientific illiteracy, economic deprivation, and military conflict. Of course, this doesn't just apply to communities and cultures, this applies to the individual too. If you are a person who has a strong belief in something, be it a god, the scientific method, evolution, the Big Bang, whatever, take a moment to ask yourself sincerely, are you willing to have that seriously challenged? If there was evidence which undeniably disproved that belief, would you embrace it? Because if the answer is no, if you're willing to shun evidence in favour of your reputation or vested interests, well then, I'm sorry, but you are precisely the problem. You're holding back scientific endeavour, and you're in serious need of a re-evaluation of your philosophy. One day I might eat my words about evolution, about God, about everything that I stand for. In the future, it might all be proven wrong, but if such an exciting day ever did come, I wouldn't be ashamed for a second to immediately rethink the way that I view the world, and, most importantly, I'd be exhilarated by the prospect of change.